Okay, good morning, good afternoon, whatever time it is and you guys are watching this. Obviously, I'm Graeme over here at Amicus Recruitment. I'm going to head up the Go and DevOps division for Germany. I'm joined today by the wonderful Anna. She's obviously a People Business Partner over at Data4Life. She's fantastic. She had great insight into kind of neurodiversity, scaling tech teams, as well as obviously diversity and inclusion in the whole remit. But I'd love, obviously, brief introduction for everyone watching Anna. Before we obviously get into the podcast recording this episode of how we can create an inclusive environment for diversity among tech teams. Great to have you with me, Anna.
Thanks for having me, Graeme. It's nice to be here. Thanks for those who don't know me. My name's Anna Toews. I'm a People Business Partner at Data4Life, which is a nonprofit in Potsdam, Berlin, and also Singapore. And I've been in HR and tech since 2016. Just here in Berlin. So everything I say is with my experience and knowledge from the tech area here in Berlin, mostly in startups and startup-like organizations. And excited to talk to you about diversity and inclusion in tech. I think it's a really important topic. And the more people we can reach, the more inclusive, I guess, we can make the tech environments.
100%. Nicely summarized. Well, like I say, the whole purpose of this recording, this conversation, is to increase and improve those inclusive environments among tech teams. I know it's a topic that many of my clients are struggling with currently. So it's definitely, I'm sure you'll be able to provide some great insight and value. So I suppose then to kind of kick us off, kind of first question, I suppose to kind of begin the conversation. So in order to kind of increase diversity amongst tech teams, you'll be aware many companies do try to attract more and more diverse talent, but typically they have quite a torrid time to struggle quite a bit, you could say. I'm just wondering, why is it you think so many companies find it so hard to diversify kind of their talent, especially within the tech teams?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think a lot of times the first thought to kind of increase diversity is just to hire someone who is diverse. Why not, right? So I mean, just go ahead and find that one woman for the team of 12 men in the front end development or something like that. And I think that's kind of where the hard part is, that just hiring that one person might be okay, but will that one person actually be comfortable in that team? And is the setup and the environment right for that person that might not fit 100% with the rest of the team? So I think what is really important at the beginning is to create an environment that is inclusive for the people that are already there and that might not speak up about their sexual orientation or their background or maybe their mental health issues, disabilities, any type of things that you wouldn't be able to see right away. Obviously, if you see this is a person that is being read as a woman and she's a developer, you can see that very clearly. But whether a person has been diagnosed with ADHD or comes from a migration background and the language spoken in the office is only their second or third language, these are the types of things that you don't know. And creating this environment where these things can be communicated openly and people that are different, for lack of a better word, are accepted and feel good is, I think, the base that you need to create before you can go out and find the diverse job boards or go to the conferences that focus on women in tech, Black in tech, or LGBTQI plus in tech, etc. I mean, there's lots of different groups that that we could recommend, that you could go look for the right candidates. But then the question is, again, will those candidates want to work for you? Will they stay in the company once you hired them? Will they make it through probation period, and will they be happy? And I think that's the key point there.
Excellent. I'm sure, of course, we'll kind of come on to a later point, obviously, how we can attract these engineers to kind of work with these companies, but also kind of building on that, how we can actually retain them once they do join. We actually have an expression over here in England. I'm sure you have it, guys, in Germany as well. Kind of putting the cart before the horse. What I can see with a lot of my clients, they want to hire diversely, which is fantastic, but oftentimes, as you mentioned, they don't have the kind of foundations in place for the current team, but obviously to foster that environment that's going to be a success for new hires and, of course, kind of existing hires. But that being said, then, so you mentioned obviously kind of the point regarding the current team, kind of potential characteristics they may have that make each individual kind of diverse within the team. There's always a huge point regarding kind of cultural fit versus cultural add, that whole kind of dimension, I suppose. I'm just wondering, obviously this may be a reason companies struggle, obviously a difficult question to kind of solve, hence why so many companies kind of struggle with it. But what can we do to ensure that when someone does join a company, regardless of their characteristics, to make sure that they are going to kind of be a fit as well as potentially an add to the culture? How can you make that transition as smooth as possible, I would say?
Yeah, I think it's again about kind of creating the space of this environment, and I think there's two key things that I personally see as kind of the first step, which one would be getting the buy-in for leadership, whether that's a manager of an individual team. Let's say that we have a mobile development team who has a manager that says, I really want more diversity in my team in particular, or whether that's the CTO that needs to be convinced what the benefits are of having a diverse team. So I think we could fill a complete episode with talking about why diversity is beneficial to teams itself, to business goals, to revenue, to all kinds of different topics. But that would kind of go a little bit too deep on the other side. But I think getting that buy-in from leadership, from C-level, from management is kind of the key thing to start out. And also looking at the status quo. So do we have already women in the development team? Do we have people with a different religious background? Do we, for example, have someone who comes in the office every day, but they hide several times a day because they need to go pray somewhere, but no one really knows where they're going, and they think they're going to smoke break or something like that. A lot of things that might not be openly communicated for whatever reason. Or maybe they are perfectly communicated, but those people might still feel a little bit alone in these categories and these aspects. So what I've done in a few companies is just doing a survey and just asking the individuals themselves. So actually not looking at the data that we see in HR, for example. Obviously, we can look at the nationality, like what's your passport, but your passport might not reflect your native language, might not reflect where you were born, how you grew up, your religion, etc. But more asking questions that the team themselves have to answer, whether that's for one team individually, for a whole department, organization, etc. But looking at, do you feel included? Do you feel like you can be yourself? Do you trust your manager? I think that's also a really important thing. I know y'all had an episode on trust and empathy recently, and also one on psychological safety, which some listeners might be interested in. I think those are kind of great foundations to then go deeper into creating the diverse and inclusive environment, but really looking at what do we have in the team, and first, how can we make those team members more comfortable? How can we ensure that even if we bring in new team members that are in some sense diverse, that they are being accepted, they feel comfortable, they can work productively in the environment that we currently have and are building to improve.
I see. Just touching on that, you mentioned kind of gathering that information through a survey. Is this something that you would do like one-to-one, like in person, or is this done via like a form or something online? How would you go around gathering that information?
Good question. I would never do one-on-one. I would do it anonymously. My personal opinion. Also, everything I say today is my personal opinion. Some people might disagree, or a different experience. Always depends on the size of the company and the environment that you have. But I think to get the honest answer from someone, it has to be completely anonymous. Again, in my opinion, and it can be a one-time thing to start off to get the status quo, and then maybe repeat. Some companies use tools for wholesale surveys, some call them, where every week you have to answer some questions. And I know there's some great tools where you can set up to put in diversity questions and questions around kind of belonging in the team, inclusion, etc. But I think doing a anonymous survey that each team member has to answer, so kind of make it as mandatory as possible, would be the start, and then to kind of repeat it. And obviously what you can do if you realize there are certain team members that belong to a specific group, you could ask those individual team members to have a conversation or offer to kind of create some employee resource groups or team member initiatives that we might say, hey, we have 7 different tech teams and each tech team has 2 single dads. Why not, create a group for single dads who can talk about the struggles they have, and then maybe bring that information to the leadership or to the organization, etc.
Okay, I see. I do like the idea of kind of going beyond, as you said, going beyond the kind of passport information, for example, and really getting, I suppose, kind of boots on the ground right in the front line, so you can get the information that maybe isn't available just on a, I suppose, like an application form or a checklist or something, and obviously spotting those patterns among teams to create an environment that kind of facilitates for, I suppose, for each of the kind of diverse characteristics. Touching on that then, say, for example, just spitballing, to be fair, say, for example, you had a couple individuals, for lack of a better phrase, like an outlier, a characteristic that would be so different from the rest. Maybe there isn't a pattern that you could spot, and they express in the form that potentially feel, as you mentioned previously, somewhat alone, maybe slightly alienated from the group. How would you kind of foster that environment to make sure that they do feel kind of heard, as you said, have that awareness amongst the team? And what kind of steps could you take to increase the feeling of, I suppose, kind of belonging in that team?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, and again, depends on kind of like, let's say, the category that we're talking about. But I think regardless of what types of people you have in the team, what's always helpful is kind of have some type of awareness sessions in the team. So that again can be something that is initiated by a team lead, by HR, and it could be something about, for example, it's Pride Month. Almost over, but right now it's Pride as we're recording. In my organization, we had a awareness session on LGBTQIA+. So it was very basic kind of explanation of what the letters stand for, what's important when you're talking to people who potentially use different pronouns that you would expect them to use, things like that. But it was just an awareness session. We set it up. We created a little bit of a decoration in the room and invited people digitally and physically in the office. And basically, if there is a person, for example, that is within the LGBTI plus group, but they don't feel comfortable talking about it, by seeing that the company puts up flags, there's several people that voluntarily attend this session. The company maybe pays $5-10 for cake or cookies or something like that. It's very small things that you can do to just make sure that those people realize, hey, actually, it's not, I don't have to be afraid to say something. And it kind of goes back to that psychological safety, the trust and the honesty. I think those are really important. And then obviously creating a environment that's as transparent as possible. So that kind of goes back to feedback processes, salary increases, maybe even being able to have transparent salary bands that are visible to team members, things like that. Obviously, this is not always possible, depends on the organization, etc. But anything that kind of creates an environment that makes the people feel like they have the same opportunities and can be treated the exact same way as everybody else in the organization. So maybe to summarize, have the buy-in from the managers, have the awareness sessions, have someone who's an advocate, whether they are part of this underrepresented group or just an ally, for like a better word. Have someone that maybe also shares their experiences. Maybe there is someone on the team that's very proud, to use my previous example, to be a single dad and wants to talk about it in the team, and maybe talk about how it is to work part-time, and that might get some other team members to say, you know what, I want to work part-time because I actually have a disability and it's really hard for me to go to the doctor's appointments, etc. Or I have a family member to take care of, or things like that. I think sometimes we also think of diversity as skin color and religion and gender and nothing else around, but there's a lot of different aspects that really are included in the term that we really need to be aware of.
I see. Okay, that makes sense. So I think what I kind of took from that is, as you mentioned initially, the kind of awareness. First of all, having that, I suppose, kind of top-down approach, where the kind of leadership, the managers, are kind of showing that through not just kind of token gestures, as you say, but through creating awareness, kind of improve that kind of psychological safety and create that kind of framework, as you put. There is kind of room. There obviously is awareness and the team are kind of there for you approach, I suppose, for lack of a better phrase. But you mentioned there kind of feedback culture as well, because of course the kind of leadership won't know what to do if kind of no one's kind of speaking with them, etc. They don't know the status quo of the team. So that kind of feedback culture, the kind of feedback loop that you would create, how would you kind of instill that within the team? What sort of steps would you take to develop that?
Yeah, again, I've said this before, it depends on the organization, depends on the
Depends,
team, etc. Yeah, of course. But I think creating equal opportunities that are visible to everybody and the communication of that is really important. So if you have a clear feedback process that is, let's say, an annual evaluation process, an annual or biannual 360-degree feedback where team peers are asked for feedback about a specific person. Creating a process, if you don't have one, or if you have one, communicating it openly that everybody is aware. I have the right once a year, twice a year, etc., to get feedback from my manager, from my peers, and maybe, who knows, maybe from external clients also, if you're working in sales or in a role that works with external partners or clients. And therefore getting the feeling that everybody has equal opportunities. Everybody has the opportunity to get the feedback, to receive the feedback, and maybe also be asked for the peer feedback for the team members that you're working with, or ideally kind of a bottom-up feedback to the managers. That's also something that some companies include, is a bottom-up feedback for managers specifically, where the team members then give feedback, which is also something that can make a team member feel really included and valued, because their opinion about their manager is valued and not only the other way around. So maybe to summarize again, having a clear process that is communicated clear and that shows equal opportunities for everybody, regardless of any of the nationality, all the other categories we mentioned earlier.
Okay, I see. So obviously, kind of increasing that transparency, not just as mentioned, kind of top down, but also bottom up. So that kind of, I suppose, instill that feeling of empowerment among the team. Also, now that being said, then obviously, in order for things to be kind of successful, etc., accountability is needed from kind of not just leaders, but also amongst the entire team. Now, how would you? I'm aware from kind of experience my previous clients. For all the will in the world, they want to improve diversity, inclusion within their teams, but for one reason or another, it never really kind of pans out that way. I think one of the main reasons would be accountability, as I say, among the leaders, but also amongst the team. How would you, or what processes would you instill to kind of improve that feeling of accountability amongst the team?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think inclusion again of a lot of different people in the processes. So if we're talking recruitment, for example, there's always someone that says, I want to hire a woman for this tech team, or we need to have category XYZ for this team. But then this question, who's accountable for that? Is it the recruiter who passes on all the CVs of the people that fit exactly the brief that we have gotten from the bottom, from the top? Or is it the interviewers that are not briefed on unconscious biasness, for example, and they are not aware of the biases they actually have when they're interviewing the people? So I think accountability is something that has to run through everybody that's involved in the process. If we're, again, talking about recruitment, because it's kind of an easy example, it's really about getting the accountability for every single person involved. And if you in the organization are lucky enough that you have a good HR and recruiting team, then with good leadership, then maybe the head of the recruiting team, head of HR, whoever is in charge, could be the one that basically is setting these accountabilities and organizing things like unconscious bias trainings, interviewer trainings, trainings on how to properly screen CVs, how to properly evaluate, how to properly ask questions, and those types of things. And ideally, if you have the buy-in from the managers, like we talked in earlier, the accountability should kind of be intrinsic there. But this is obviously the ideal. That is not always reality, let's say.
Of course, of course. I suppose then, may or may not be happy for the listeners to kind of hear that it's not necessarily an easy answer. That accountability needs to be adopted by everybody, kind of company-wide. But like you say, if you have the buy-in from the kind of leadership, the managers, it should be ideally a kind of trickle-down approach, I suppose. And obviously that feedback that we mentioned as well, kind of bottom up. Ideally, the communication should kind of work in unison so that it creates that foundation, that environment amongst the team. Okay, brilliant. Now that we've established how we can foster that foundation, that environment for the existing team and kind of new members of the team, and we've reached that kind of period of security level, psychological safety, etc. What would be the next steps? How can we actually attract that diverse talent? Because it is out there, of course. People are out there that do want to join companies, but how would a company make sure that it's their company that is attractive to this pool of talent?
Yeah, I think this is a really important point. This is kind of how to say it, like a non-stop activity. It never ends. It's like a thing that you constantly need to work on. But one thing is obviously kind of creating the image to go outside of what you as a company want to represent. So before you get to the point of actually posting that job description, actually looking at what is our presentation externally. So what is Kununu for the Germans or Glassdoor? What are the reviews? Are we on LinkedIn? Are we connected to specific companies on LinkedIn? Do we post regularly? Do we have any of these awareness sessions, trainings, anything that we talked about earlier? Are we representing that through social media, through our career site? Do we have a diversity statement on our career site? I think what's really important, whether you're a hiring manager, you're an HR manager, the CEO, CTO, whoever, is put yourself in the shoes of the individual who is looking for a job with an inclusive environment. If I'm looking for a job and the company has no mentioning of any type of diversity, they're not, so for the German speakers, they're not using gender language in terms of, adding the female and male endings to words. For me, that would be a no-go. I would not apply for this company at all. If you're not looking at these things, then you're not even getting the candidates. And even if you're going out and actively trying to recruit, again, if a company messages me and say, hey, we have a really cool opportunity, and then I look at the company and the board is, sorry to say, 7 old white guys, then I would also question if this is the right company for me personally. So I think it's about, doing the work internally, but then making sure that it's also being put externally. Maybe you have a great diversity statement that is not really formulated out, but is lived within the company, but you just don't have it written down anymore. Just, invest some time, internal communications, or maybe someone is, maybe you have a tech communications team or something like that, and they can create a diversity statement that you can put on the platform, that you can put on your website, you can put on the bottom of your job descriptions that you're posting, so that the people who are initially attracted to the title of the job description that you have will continue to stay engaged as they're reading the job description. And there's, again, I think we could fill a whole episode about how to write job description that are gender neutral or that are more focused towards women or more female wording. There's a lot of tools, especially with AI now, that we can use to really run job descriptions through a test to see, are we using words that are more focused on a more traditional male environment, female environment, or completely neutral. So these are all types of things that kind of need to be done for someone to not only say, yeah, the job sounds cool, but also know that the people that are interviewing me are diverse themselves already. So even if you got through the first hurdle and yeah, we got a lot of applicants that are super mixed and we have really good input coming in without having to go externally, or even when we're doing sourcing, we're getting responses from a lot of different people, but then maybe it ends at I had 3 interviews and there was not a single non-native English speaker, and I feel uncomfortable because English is my third language, for example, or it's a development, let's say backend development position, and there's not a single woman under 30 in there, or a single person under 30, or over 40, or something like this, you know. So try to mix also the interviewer panel as much as possible, and who knows, maybe if you don't have anyone, try to promote someone internally, maybe give them the opportunities to get to that position, maybe give an interview or training so that the junior developer could also be included in the interviews, and maybe give their perspective of how it is to work for that company. So there's a lot of these kind of smaller things, I think, that you would need to do and continuously reevaluate, continuously update, to make sure that people are included. And then, you know, the easiest way to kind of keep track of that is just, again, do a survey. Some people might say, don't do too many surveys, people are going to get tired. But after hiring someone, after, you know, a week, a month, you could just do a quick survey and say, you know, what attracted you initially and how was the interview process for you, just to get an idea of if what you're doing is actually working, or if there should be more that you're doing, if maybe your presence externally is different in a positive or in a negative way from what you had in mind, and continuously to do that. And ideally, you know, what we always do in recruitment, we're always asking people for feedback. If we know I couldn't hire this person, but, you know, they really enjoyed the process, they gave me good feedback, just ask them for a review on Glassdoor or Kununu, just an honest review. It doesn't always have to be 100% perfect, because then we all know they're fake. But ask people for reviews. Ask people for reviews in the company. Don't force them. Don't give them any incentive. If you put a review, you get, I don't know, some kind of bonus. But tell people, you know, if you're honestly happy, please put a review, because we all know unhappy people like to complain a lot, but the people that are satisfied normally don't go out and you know, take the time to write a review or to put their statement out. So yeah, there's a lot of these little things that we could do, and I think there's a lot of kind of small wins, let's say, that companies could do to get to the point. Ideally, obviously, if you have the resources and you have the time, there would be a beautiful roadmap with all kinds of milestones, from, you know, the job description, from creating the diversity statement, and sending your team members maybe to conferences that are focusing on diverse talent or something like that, and that you could basically just check off. Because I think measuring data, even though we're talking about humans, we're talking about individuals, it's still important to have something that you can measure and see where the success is coming from, and not just blindly throw out ideas and throw out actions and see if it works.
I see. I think you kind of touched on the crux of it there, kind of why so many companies do find a hard time achieving this, because it is a bunch of kind of small wins, ongoing small wins, I might add, and not just one action you can complete. Say, okay, we're finished, we're done, mission accomplished. Essentially, it's a series of ongoing actions that really need to be improved constantly, touched upon constantly. Like you say, potentially giving interview guidance or interview training to a junior developer, etc. Little things like that can really improve the whole process and give that environment of inclusivity. And that being said, then obviously the first point, kind of branding, be it on the kind of job adverts or the website, etc. I suppose it's extremely difficult to do that if you're not actually doing the functions that you're kind of saying you do day to day. You have to be obviously loud and proud around the good things that you do, but it's impossible to do that unless you're actually doing them. So I think it goes obviously kind of hand in hand as well. And that being said, then you mentioned as well, be it the interview panel, be it the board, for example, if they're all kind of one demographic, it can be obviously quite challenging. Typically, kind of middle-aged white men too. We had a saying over here. This in the context, it was surrounding the judiciary over here in England and Wales, but it's also applies quite well here. And it was talking about the demographic, the middle-aged middle class and middle-minded. And I think if all of the panel of interviewers, etc., are of that same demographic, it can be incredibly difficult to not just see the kind of value and the characteristics you're trying to interview for, but also for the person you're interviewing to kind of feel that connection and also get the best out of them. So I think it is important to have not just the interview panel, but also all the kind of people, the meetings throughout the process, as well as obviously the first few days onboarding, etc., meeting different teams. So I think lots to go on there. But I think what we could do potentially would be quite helpful, like you say, creating that kind of roadmap of small wins, small actions, things that we can do to help achieve this status of, I suppose, inclusivity or psychological safety, etc.
And I might want to add one thing.
Please do.
Because you mentioned this, demographic that is quite standard. Middle. What did you say? Middle class,
middle-aged, middle class, and middle-minded.
It's really no fault of the people that are sitting in that interview, and how are you supposed to change that? I mean, if you're looking at me, I'm white, I'm German, native German speaker, almost native English speaker. It's let's say easy for me, but I can also not all of a sudden change and make someone else feel comfortable. But what I can do is still, I can, even though I'm red female and I consider myself female, I can still put she, her in my email signature, so that someone knows I am offering my pronouns, even though I am heterosexual and cis female. If someone might not be, they might also feel welcome to put their pronouns. And if it's a big statement, if a middle-aged white man writes he, him in his email signature, it's very little, but that shows someone else this person is acknowledging that there are other pronouns. People are welcome to tell them their pronouns, and this is accepted in the organization. So it's again these that we mentioned, quick wins and really small things that you can do if you are aware, if you are putting yourself in the shoes of the other people. And sometimes it's also a matter of just showing a little bit of humanity and not asking questions and checking things off a list, but maybe getting into a conversation. And if someone says, oh, I'm from Bangladesh, then the other person might say, just ask very interested, what's the school system like, or how's your university like, or, what's your main, I don't know, holiday that you're celebrating, or things like that, and just showing a little bit interest, and not just looking at the facts and looking at the CV. So, because otherwise some people might say, yeah, what are we supposed to do? We only have white men here in the company and we want to hire more diverse people, but how are we going to do that? We cannot just kick these guys out. They're doing a great job. The company is succeeding. But again, the awareness can be shown and people can be allies, let's say, without having to be of a underrepresented group themselves.
I think you kind of summarized that very nicely, in fairness. Kind of touch on each point there. So I think overall having that system of kind of awareness, kind of feedback, it kind of forms that kind of bedrock, as you say, the kind of foundation that obviously is kind of built on daily with these small actions, small wins. Needs to be ongoing, essentially. But I think that was kind of all the questions I had, to be fair. I think an incredibly dense episode filled with little nuggets of information that most certainly, if you could start the episode, kind of move to any point within the recording, you'll most certainly find a quote or some information that would be incredibly helpful. So I suppose then, Anna, thank you very much for your time. It's been great sitting down and chatting with you. Do you have any kind of last remaining comments you'd like to make or closing statements, or do you think we've covered almost everything?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It was a pleasure talking to you and talking about this topic. I would just say for anyone who's interested in getting started in creating an environment, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to make mistakes also and ask questions. And from my experience, even if you don't know something, by asking questions, you can already make people feel very included just by showing that you're interested, that you're trying, that you want to do something. And there's great networks, there's great resources like your podcast. There's some great groups and organizations that can help with these things. If a company really wants to make a big step, don't be afraid and try it. And as we mentioned several times, buy-in from management is really important. So try to get that and you're good to go. And thanks again for having me.
Wonderful. My pleasure, Anna. And like I say, you'll be able to catch this recording. It'll be on LinkedIn with all the details, but also kind of YouTube as well. But if you can't watch it, or if you're traveling on the bus or tram or something, also be available on Spotify too.